The story begins on a seemingly ordinary morning in a bustling downtown courthouse. Inside a mid-sized courtroom, law students, attorneys, and members of the public settle into their seats. Among them is Imani Ross, a poised, confident black woman in her final year at law school. She's bright, articulate, and widely respected by her professors and peers. Today, she's observing a high-profile criminal trial as part of her internship with a prestigious defense law firm. Imani sits beside the lead defense attorney, taking notes with sharp attention. She's not just another intern. She has a commanding presence and a deep understanding of the law. Everyone notices her, even if they don't quite know who she is yet. Presiding over the case is Judge Ronald Whitaker, a white man in his late 60s known for his no-nonsense courtroom demeanor. He's old-fashioned, stern, and often impatient, particularly toward young professionals and women. He has ruled from the bench for over 3 decades, and some whisper that his ways are outdated, even discriminatory, but no one has ever dared to challenge him directly, until now. As a key witness for the prosecution gives testimony, Imani notices a glaring factual inconsistency. She flips through the court documents, double-checks her notes, and sees a discrepancy that could influence the entire outcome of the case. Hesitant at first, she whispers it to the defense attorney, but he brushes her off, focused on cross-examining the witness. Unable to remain silent, Imani respectfully raises her hand and asks to speak. The courtroom quiets. The judge glares down from the bench, confused and irritated. "You are?" he asks sharply. "Imani Ross, legal intern for the defense," she responds, standing confidently. "This is not a classroom, young lady," Judge Whitaker snaps. "Sit down and be quiet." Imani stays calm. "Your Honor, I apologize, but the witness's testimony contradicts the official report entered into the court record on June 4th. I believe it's relevant." Whitaker is visibly annoyed. "Are you accusing a witness of perjury? That's a serious claim for a student. Be careful with your words." "I'm not accusing anyone," she replies evenly, "but the court should not proceed with incorrect evidence." The judge leans forward, eyes narrowed. "You're lying. There's nothing in the record that contradicts what was just said. If you keep this up, I'll hold you in contempt." The room goes silent. Imani, unwavering, opens a file and offers a printed exhibit to the bailiff. Page 3 of the police report, Your Honor. Whitaker refuses to look. "I said you're a liar," gasps echo through the courtroom. Even the stenographer pauses momentarily. Imani looks at him calmly, then says, "You'll regret those words, Your Honor." The judge's face reddens. Remove her from the courtroom. 2 bailiffs move toward her. Imani gathers her things and walks out with dignity, head high, as stunned onlookers whisper furiously. Outside, she makes a quiet phone call, not to her lawyer, but to her father. We don't hear the full conversation, but one line is clear. "Dad, he just called me a liar in open court." We now realize Imani Ross is the daughter of the Attorney General, and things are about to get complicated. The fallout from the courtroom clash begins to ripple through the legal community, like a shockwave. Within hours, the story spreads quietly through courthouse halls, law school lounges, and legal offices. At first, it's treated like courtroom gossip. A law student challenged Judge Whitaker? She got kicked out? People whisper, some amused, some concerned. But as more details emerge, especially that she was called a liar in open court, the mood shifts from curiosity to discomfort. Imani Ross returns to law school the next day with her head held high, but the weight of the incident follows her like a shadow. Some professors commend her bravery in private, reminding her that standing up for truth is the essence of law. Others warn her to be cautious. "You're talented, Imani," one says. "Don't let this derail your future." There's an unspoken fear. Challenging a powerful white judge, even when you're right, can have long-term consequences. At her internship with the defense firm, things grow tense. The senior attorney she was shadowing during the trial avoids eye contact. HR schedules a meeting, citing concerns about decorum and urging her to stay quiet about the situation for the sake of the firm's reputation. It's clear they're afraid of upsetting the court or losing favor with Judge Whitaker, but Imani refuses to stay silent. She drafts a formal complaint to the Judicial Conduct Review Board, outlining the judge's unprofessional conduct and attaching documented proof that she had cited an accurate contradiction. She also emails the court clerk requesting a copy of the transcript from that day's proceedings. Then, the whispers get louder because someone finally puts the pieces together. A junior journalist at a local newspaper, researching courthouse bias for an upcoming feature, stumbles across the complaint and recognizes the last name, Ross. With a little digging, the journalist uncovers the truth. Imani is the daughter of Charles Ross, the current U.S. Attorney General. The story is explosive, and it leaks to the press in a matter of hours. Suddenly, it's not just a courthouse rumor, it's headline news. The media pounces on the story with a frenzy. Judge accused of calling as daughter a liar in courtroom meltdown. Legal system rocked as Ajee's daughter exposes judicial misconduct. Social media erupts. Some celebrate Imani's courage. Hashtags like #IamAniRoss and #CourtroomBias trend on Twitter. Civil rights activists and law students across the country voice their support. But others accuse her of using her father's name to get attention, even though she hadn't revealed her family connection. Inside the courthouse, Judge Whitaker is furious. He releases a defensive statement denying any misconduct and insisting he didn't know who Imani was. "I treat all people equally under the law," he claims, a line that only inflames critics. Imani, meanwhile, stays grounded. In interviews, she avoids dragging her father into it, insisting, "This isn't about who I'm related to. It's about right and wrong." But it's clear that her last name has pulled a much bigger spotlight onto a deeply flawed system. Behind the scenes, powerful forces begin to mobilize, some to protect the judge, others to defend Imani. The battle for truth has begun, and the stakes are rising quickly. With Imani Ross's identity as the Attorney General's daughter now public, the story escalates from a local courthouse controversy to a national headline. Media outlets across the country pick up the story, each framing it differently. Some treat it as a dramatic courtroom incident, others as a civil rights flashpoint, but all focus on the explosive revelation. The young black woman Judge Whitaker publicly called a liar is the daughter of one of the most powerful legal figures in the nation. Imani becomes a lightning rod for public conversation. Civil rights advocates and legal reformers rally behind her, hailing her as a symbol of courage in the face of systemic injustice. Editorials begin to appear with titles like "Imani Ross stood up to power, and now power is standing with her." Old judges, new voices, the reckoning in America's courtrooms. TV news shows invite her for interviews, but Imani remains selective. In her few public statements, she's calm, poised, and careful. She reiterates that this isn't about her father's position, but about integrity in the legal system. "If this could happen to me, imagine how many others it's happened to, people without last names that make headlines," she says. Behind the scenes, the revelation stuns Judge Whitaker and his allies. Until now, he has enjoyed untouchable status. But now he's under scrutiny, not only from the press but from national ethics boards, watchdog organizations, and legal advocacy groups. The complaint Imani filed, initially dismissed as noise by some, is now the centerpiece of a formal inquiry. At the Department of Justice, Attorney General Charles Ross is caught between two worlds, father and official. Privately, he is livid about what happened to his daughter, but publicly, he must maintain neutrality. He avoids making direct comments on the case, issuing only a short statement affirming respect for judicial review and the importance of professionalism in all branches of the legal system. Still, his silence is strategic. Those who know Charles Ross understand he's not ignoring the situation. He's gathering information, consulting quietly with allies in the legal community, and preparing for a larger response. Meanwhile, investigative journalists dig into Judge Whittaker's past. What they find isn't pretty. Several complaints, long buried or quietly dismissed, come to light. Former attorneys and court employees come forward, describing a long pattern of bias, particularly against women and people of color. Some say they were afraid to speak out. Now, with Imani's case in the spotlight, they finally feel safe to tell their stories. In the public arena, Judge Whittaker fights back. He appears on conservative talk shows, accusing cancel culture of targeting him and claiming the courtroom incident is being blown out of proportion. He insists that Imani was disruptive and used her father's influence to shame him. But those defenses fall flat, especially as more victims speak out and legal experts dismantle his justifications point by point. For Imani, the pressure is growing. She's no longer just a student or a quiet intern. She's become a national figure, a symbol of a broken system and the hope for its reform. But the more visibility she gains, the more powerful enemies she makes, and in the shadows, forces begin aligning, both to protect the judge and to take him down. The legal world is shifting, and Imani Ross is at the center of the storm. As public pressure mounts and media scrutiny intensifies, the story begins to take on a more personal dimension, particularly for the Ross family. Behind the headlines, Imani Ross and her father, Attorney General Charles Ross, are struggling with very different visions of justice. Caught in the crossfire between family loyalty and public duty. At home, the atmosphere is tense. Imani, emboldened by national support, wants to keep pushing for accountability. She's encouraged by the way other victims have stepped forward and believes she has a responsibility to use her platform to demand meaningful change. But her father, while proud of her courage, is cautious. He's not just a father, he's the top legal officer in the country, and his every move is watched, measured, and politicized. Charles urges her to proceed carefully. "You've already made a powerful statement," he says. "Let the system run its course now." But Imani sees this as the exact problem, that the system only works slowly, or not at all, when it comes to justice for people like her. Their conversations grow strained. She accuses him of hiding behind his title, of being more concerned with politics than principle. He, in turn, worries she's being used, that others are turning her into a symbol and putting her future at risk. The personal struggle simmers. The professional consequences deepen. Within the legal world, the debate over Judge Whittaker intensifies. Legal scholars publish think pieces about bias in the judiciary, while civil rights groups begin calling for sweeping reforms. Law students across the country organize protests, demanding accountability and transparency in courtroom conduct. The judge, however, remains defiant. He gives a rare televised interview in which he doubles down on his position, claiming the incident with Imani is being used as a political weapon. He frames himself as the victim of a witch hunt, and his defenders, including a few conservative legal groups, rally around him. They claim Imani only received attention because of her father's position, despite her repeated efforts to keep her identity private. But behind the judge's show of strength, cracks begin to appear. More complaints from the past begin to surface, old cases, previous interns, even transcripts where he dismissed or humiliated attorneys of color. The pattern becomes undeniable. Pressure builds on the Judicial Review Committee, which agrees to hold a public ethics hearing. Charles Ross now faces intense pressure from both sides. Politicians on the right accuse him of failing to defend the judiciary. Activists on the left demand he take a stronger stance against Whitaker. And Imani, his own daughter, refuses to back down. She holds a press conference where she calmly outlines the facts, reaffirms her respect for the law, but boldly states, "No one, not even a judge, should be above accountability." That statement shifts everything. It's no longer about a single incident. It's about a larger reckoning in the justice system. And for Charles Ross, it's a wake-up call. He begins working quietly behind the scenes, reaching out to ethics leaders, legal organizations, and allies in Congress to prepare for what's coming. Hearing is now inevitable, and so is a confrontation that will test the strength of justice and the bond between a father and his daughter. The long-awaited judicial ethics hearing against Judge Ronald Whitaker begins under intense public scrutiny. Held in a grand hall rather than a traditional courtroom, the hearing is broadcast live on multiple news networks. Reporters fill the aisles, civil rights groups stand in silent protest outside, and the entire legal community watches as the battle for truth enters its most critical phase. Judge Whitaker enters flanked by his legal team, still defiant but visibly worn by the weeks of pressure. He insists on his innocence, claiming again that the courtroom incident with Imani Ross was a misunderstanding. "I did not call her a liar," he says under oath. "I questioned her interruption and whether her statement aligned with the record. There was confusion, not misconduct." But this time, his words no longer hold the same weight. The committee has gathered a long list of prior complaints, transcripts, and witness statements, all showing a pattern of disrespect, especially toward black attorneys, women, and young legal professionals. One by one, former clerks, attorneys, and interns step forward to testify about the same kind of behavior: dismissiveness, public humiliation, and unfair treatment. Then comes the most anticipated moment. Imani Ross takes the stand. She walks to the podium with composure and purpose. The room falls silent. Cameras zoom in. Her voice is calm, steady, and powerful as she recounts exactly what happened in that courtroom. She doesn't dramatize. She doesn't attack. She simply tells the truth and lets the facts speak for themselves. She references the official transcript, which confirms Judge Whitaker's exact words: "You're lying." She also presents the documented report she had offered that day, proving that her statement was accurate and the witness testimony had indeed been flawed. But Imani's testimony goes beyond the facts. She speaks to the deeper issue. This isn't just about me. It's about every law student who's been silenced, every black professional who's been called angry for defending themselves, every young voice that's been told they don't belong in rooms of power. Her words are met with thunderous applause outside the building, where a crowd watches the live stream on giant screens. Judge Whitaker's defense crumbles. The more he tries to explain his past behavior as firm discipline or misunderstood authority, the more isolated he becomes. He is no longer seen as a respected judge, but as a symbol of an outdated, unjust system. The Judicial Review Committee deliberates for several hours. Then, in a unanimous vote, they rule to suspend Judge Whitaker from the bench indefinitely pending further investigation, a rare and dramatic decision. The verdict sends a shockwave through the legal world. Headlines immediately break. Judge suspended after Attorney General's daughter testifies in landmark hearing. That night, Imani receives hundreds of messages from law students, civil rights lawyers, and even strangers, thanking her for standing up. Her father, watching from his office in Washington, quietly closes his laptop and takes a deep breath. His daughter didn't need his title to be powerful. She used her own voice. The hearing is over, but the movement it sparked is just beginning. For Imani, justice has been served, but her work is far from done. Months after the explosive hearing that led to Judge Whitaker's suspension, the dust begins to settle, but the impact of what happened is still echoing across the country. The legal world has changed. What began as a single moment of confrontation in a courtroom has become a national turning point in the conversation around justice, accountability, and power. Imani Ross, once just a brilliant law student shadowing a case, is now a name recognized in law schools and civil rights circles nationwide. She didn't seek fame, she sought fairness, but her refusal to back down made her a symbol of integrity in a system long criticized for silencing marginalized voices. Now, she's standing on a stage, wearing her cap and gown, preparing to graduate top of her class. As she walks across the stage, the dean announces her name with unmistakable pride. The entire auditorium erupts in applause, not only for her academic excellence, but for the strength, grace, and courage she showed under pressure. Watching from the front row is her father, Attorney General Charles Ross, dressed in a tailored suit, his usual composed demeanor softened by emotion. The months since the hearing have been difficult for him, balancing his public office with the personal experience of watching his daughter fight a system he helps oversee. But now, seeing her in this moment, he realizes something profound. She doesn't need his protection. She is the next wave of justice. After the ceremony, Imani takes a short break from the spotlight but soon reemerges, not as a student, but as a rising legal powerhouse. She accepts an offer from a prestigious civil rights firm that focuses on judicial accountability and equal access to justice. The firm makes a rare exception to bring her on before the bar exam results are even released. They see her not only as a future lawyer, but as a voice for transformation. Meanwhile, inspired by the public response to the Whitaker scandal, Charles Ross launches a nationwide initiative through the Justice Department, the Judicial Equity Review Program. Its mission is to review and address patterns of discrimination in courtrooms across the country. Imani's story becomes part of the training material for judges, clerks, and lawyers, a case study in how the system fails and how it can be reformed. In one of the story's final scenes, Imani walks into a courtroom, this time not as a student observer, but as a sworn-in attorney. She sets down her briefcase, smooths her jacket, and takes her place at the defense table. Her nameplate reads, Imani Ross, Esq. It's a simple detail, but it marks the culmination of everything. She fought for. The judge presiding over the case greets her with respect. The court staff nod as she enters. And most importantly, the young black girl watching from the gallery, a high schooler on a field trip, sees something powerful. A lawyer who looks like her, in control of the room. Imani doesn't need to say anything in that moment. Her presence is the message. Justice doesn't just wear robes. Sometimes it wears braids and carries a briefcase, and this is just the beginning of her legacy.